welcome to Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. This is Alan reminding you that these episodes of SunsetChatz were recorded in 2020, this one specifically in the end of July, so some of the things we mention may or may not be accurate anymore. For example, we talk about quarantine hopefully being over by the time this releases. Oops, sorry about that, past selves. There is also a very minor content warning. In the discussion of the second episode, K&R Part 2, I bring up the Joey Buttafuoco case because it's mentioned in the episode, and I do describe it, and I give a heads up like, hey, this is pretty gruesome. It's a murder case. It's a gruesome murder case, so just be aware of that if that's something that makes you uncomfortable. If you jump about 30 seconds from when I first say the name, you will be fine. And otherwise, stick around to the end for some exciting announcements about what we have going on today. Enjoy the episode.
Live from Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz, it's Wednesday time in the internet.
Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, season 10, Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. My name is Alan, and I'm gonna get this guy's ass dragged through the streets. It's Magellan. What's going on, pal?
Hey, buddy, listen. That sounds like a nice time to me.
We've already talked 1,000 times about how great the guy who plays Jack Rudolph is, but when he suddenly turns on a thick Brooklyn accent for 3 seconds, that's beautiful to me.
Yeah,
How are you doing, pal?
Awesome. I'm doing great. I actually just got off the phone with Jack Rudolph.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is he gonna get that guy's ass dragged through the streets?
Yeah, he did. He did it.
That's what they talk about when they say drag him.
Yeah. Every time that someone says drag him, Jack Rudolph has to go do it himself.
It's like he's so tired all the time.
He has
a
these
lot of
huge
flights.
bags under his eyes.
Oh,
Dragged
poor
another.
Jack.
He always tells me about it. Dragged another guy off Twitter onto the streets.
Another canceled gentleman.
I wish people would specify how far they want me to drag him. Otherwise, I gotta guess.
I gotta estimate until it seems painful enough, or else.
And then I'm like, Jack, it sounds like you're dragging someone right now. And he's like, No, I'm not.
I'm not.
And then I'm like, Jack, drag yourself. And then he's like, yeah, all right. And he drags himself home, goes to bed. And here we are.
And here we are. We are also here joined tonight by Colonel Net Brigade themselves. It's 6 from Scanline Media.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. It's going very good. As usual, I didn't come up with names for y'all until the end of, right before we hit record. And I was going through and someone was like, yeah, the dumb internet commenters, Colonel Net Brigade's back at it again. And I was like, oh, yes! I felt like I was given a gift. I wrapped it up in plastic for you.
Wow, that's so thoughtful. You know, people don't bother with wrapping so much anymore. They're like, Amazon packaging, that's enough of a wrapping paper for me.
Yeah. I tried wrapping presents last Christmas, and I'm bad at it. But it's a learnable skill, I think. Also learnable skill is talking about television shows made by Aaron Sorkin. And I think we're pretty good at it at this point, folks. We're here to talk about Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, specifically episodes 19 and 20 of Studio 60's one season. They are K&R Parts 1 and 2. K&R Part 1 has a teleplay credit by Aaron Sorkin and story credits by Mark Goffman and a bunch of other writer credits. It's got like half the staff team, I think, on it. It was directed by Timothy Busfield, and it aired originally June 7th, 2007. John, could you tell me what happens in K&R Part 1, please?
I would love to. In this episode, Jordan has surgery as the situation with Tom's brother grows more grim.
Wow. So, interesting. In a way, this is a part 2 to the last episode that we discussed, because it ends with us learning that Tom's brother is captured in the Middle East by some bad men, by some bad dudes, as the president would say it. And now we're picking up from there, and we have a lot of plots to juggle here, folks. But in general, I want to gauge the temperature of the room. What did you two think about K&R Part 1? John, you go first.
I really liked it. I mean, there's some political stuff that we'll talk about, and we're going to have a conversation about what exactly Democrats were thinking from 2001 to like 2008, I guess. But This is
No.
even further,
Yeah, no, definitely. They
to the
figured it out in
present day.
2008.
No, you're
They
right.
never thought
You're
about stuff
right.
like this
I'm just, let's take it one step at a time.
Okay.
But
My Chatz this week is socialism.
Yeah. But this episode, actually, I don't know. I'm sort of going to eat my hat a little bit because I think last week I was very down on the kind of 11th hour drama that was happening with, oh my gosh, Tom's brother has been, he's a prisoner of war, and Jordan, there's a problem with the baby and all that stuff. And by the end of this episode, I was like, oh my God, I hope that baby's going to be okay. So they really got me on this one. It's just good.
You're usually slow. Oh, go ahead, Majan.
No, go for it.
You're usually the more not cynical, but more critical, I think, of the plot lines of this series. So I'm curious if this stuff worked on you or not.
I mean, I like that it feels like the show had a better attention span across these two episodes. Like it is, I was also critical of the fact that they had this 11th hour twist last time. I thought the Jordan one was certainly better executed. But the fact that they take those and they really just deal with those and don't introduce too much else across these two episodes, I think is certainly to their credit. And in general, I appreciate the characterization of people who are like loyal and reasonably decent, trying to be good to each other during a crisis. So I thought these episodes were all right.
Yeah, it ends up being about exactly what you said. Like, well, how do you manage and maintain like empathy and also run a TV show during a crisis, which is what, in a lot of ways, this show tries to be. It's like, well, how do you work under fire in that way? I think that, I agree that some of the American jingoism stuff and the way that they talk about 9/11 and the Iraq War, all that stuff is like pretty dated, but ultimately I don't know how valuable of criticism it is to talk about a show from 2007 written by a white guy and describe it as dated, because that's like what Studio 60 is from the get-go. Is it's awkward and dated and like stuck in its time and written by an old guy, an old centrist who like doesn't know how politics work, or does, unfortunately, and just happens to have a really shitty political worldview. Like the part I think that felt the most, I just really felt like I was in a different universe from this, was this whole plot line about how they plan to rescue Tom's brother using a PMC called the Trask Company. I just felt like, and they even, like it, I've said this before, even on SunsetChatz, it doesn't give your show credit when you say things like, this feels like a medical drama, or this feels like a daytime soap, and then you do a plot that's out of one of those. Because they talk about how this sounds like it's something out of like not 24, but they mentioned something like it's like a terrorist drama, and then they're like, so we're gonna hire a PMC, and they like work in they work in Latin America, and they capture bad guys over there, and we can hire them, and it's gonna cost you a ton of money, Matt Albee.
Well, I don't want to, like, first off, I don't want to set myself up to have to eat my words next time we record, but I feel like I have a hard time believing that the message of Aaron Sorkin's show and this arc is ultimately going to be, gosh, we sure can trust PMCs. I just don't suspect that's where we're going to end up.
Right.
No, you're right. But just including that plot line, like, definitely it's not going to be like, this worked out, I'm glad we hired a PMC. It's probably going to go terribly. But just the fact that they included it is like, what? That's so weird.
I think that, to me, I feel like that's interesting in illustrating their extra
desperation, I think.
Their desperation and the extra tools at the disposal of the ultra rich, right?
The wealthy,
like,
yeah.
True. There is the moment where the lawyer asks, do you
Mary
know
King.
She has do you have anyone who has $1 million cash? And he's like, sure, I do. And then later she's like, actually, it's going to be more like 10 million. And immediately he's like, okay, so my friend Jack Rudolph. Like, that's how close at hand these issues are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have access to resources that regular humans don't. And it doesn't, I mean, we haven't seen the third part of this yet, but it doesn't seem like the show's too critical of that aspect of it, like the fact that they're rich and able to do that, whereas a lot of people who are like family members of hostages or PMCs, or POWs, excuse me, not PMCs, POWs, like can't just do that. And it's just like, well, you're going to hear about it on the news and then they're going to be killed.
Yeah,
or something.
There's some lip service to it that Tom is paying because he's getting all of this scrutiny, and he's also getting ostensibly support from the military, or at least protection. And when they show up, he's like, okay, but those other guys have brothers too. Like, are the other guys getting the same things that I am, or am I just getting this because like I'm a famous actor? But I agree that I don't think we're gonna see any sort of moment where Matt Alby's like, oh boy, I paid $1 million to save my friend's brother. It's a good thing I'm not poor, or like I can only imagine what the poor would have to go through in this situation. Like it's not going to reach that level of class consciousness anytime soon.
No, the end of this is going to be, wow, I can't believe the U.S. military pulled it out. What a bunch of heroes.
Yes, definitely.
That's the
100%.
and the
that's
plot,
what it's going to be.
That's the and when we pivot to talking about the stuff in 2001, where it's like, oh God, the cartoonishness of how people talk about the military and the bad guys just feels extremely fake. And I don't actually. I mean, I'm sure there are people who spoke like that about the country and stuff, but just we are so distanced from that era of American history now.
It's so funny that it is literally 2001, because watching that, it feels like a fucking space odyssey.
It truly does.
I one of the things that was the most interesting to me about this episode is the kind of time capsule quality that those flashbacks have, if we want to talk about those flashbacks, because I think it's something that's really hard for us to think about and empathize with now. Like, when you think about it, 9/11 is the second time in American history that the U.S. was attacked on its own soil prior to a war starting or something like that. And I mean, everybody rallied behind President Bush at that time. And so I think that a lot of what's coming out of the mouth of like Luke in particular is exaggerated, and maybe people didn't talk like that, but the heavy emphasis on nationalism was certainly something that was going on in 2001 and for the years following. I mean, we I don't know if we've talked about this before on any of our shows, Alan, or not, but every year, maybe I've even talked about this on SunsetChatz, I don't know, but every year when I start my history class, one of the first things I tell my students is about how after September 11th, they started playing that was when we were in elementary school. And at the elementary school that I was at, they started playing Proud to Be an American over the loudspeaker in the morning right after the Pledge of Allegiance. So you do the pledge, and there's a moment of silence, and they're blaring Proud to Be an American. And it might be one of those things that only happened for like a week or something, but in my mind it happened every day for years. And that was just in the air, And I remember people calling French fries freedom fries in the cafeteria and shit like that. So
yeah.
It's really strange to me, because the U.S. has been at war since then, and even before then as well. Yeah. And nowadays, like, there just isn't really any sort of enthusiasm in one direction or the other in the public consciousness when it comes to war in the Middle East. But in 2001, it was something that people really, really cared about. So yeah, it was really interesting to watch that manifested in this episode.
Do you want my sort of political take on this? I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about this.
Yeah.
We're all leftists here, but also I think in terms of America in the last 10 years at least, it's shifted from an understanding of that being patriotism, like that rah, the president is good, we're doing a good thing and fighting bad guys, to criticizing your own country as a form of patriotism, and understanding that there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. Because once you come to the understanding that what they're doing here is actually more nationalistic, and the difference between those two terms, that's why it feels so embarrassing and like awkward. Like, I kind of wanted to like not look at the screen for a while at all of this, like, everybody in the room watching the kill count or whatever on the news in 2001. I'm like, oh God, I have like vague childhood memories of people talking like that, and it's very different now because we've learned that like a lot of people, not everyone obviously, have learned that you can criticize the government, that you can criticize your country and still appreciate and want your country to be better, and that's not a bad thing necessarily.
I mean, I feel like, it's one of the classic, you hear the my country right or wrong, and there is a previous instance. There is the original Stephen Decatur, which is like way more awkwardly phrased. But usually people are actually quoting Charles Schurz, and the full quote is my country right or wrong, if right to be kept right, and if wrong to be set right. But people just shorten it to misinterpret it.
Yeah.
And so
as it often goes.
So I feel like in the years since, that second part of the statement has started to have a bit of a revival.
Yeah. You have to understand that, like this kill count stuff is, and this is not to say, by the way, to get back to the show, that Studio 60 implicitly and like entirely believes in this jingoism. Like, obviously that is in a flashback in the show, even though the show's in 06 and that's already dated to us. It's a flashback from there to a time when people were more directly afraid and anxious about a foreign enemy and were being fed, to be fair, like really biased, awful news that's telling them stuff like these awful bad actors are coming for your people and coming for our sense of living.
Yeah, and even in that scene in the writer's room, when they're looking at the news, you get like three perspectives. There's Luke's perspective, where he's like, let's kill every single person ever, and he's
let's do sketches where we do like we'll just do a bunch of sketches about Islam and make fun of Muslims,
right? And it's like, okay, if first of all, Aaron Sorkin, if Luke was supposed to be a stand-in for somebody in your real life who took Kristen Chenoweth away from you, this is a pretty shitty way to represent this guy.
Can you stop making out with my ex-girlfriend?
If you don't stop, I'm going to write you in my show as being really racist. So take that.
You better quit it.
So there's that, which felt weird for that reason. And also felt like this sort of continued character assassination of Luke. Then you have a guy who I'm pretty sure his name was Denny.
It was Denny. I caught it. Just like Prime Regis.
Exciting, yeah. Who was like, oh, there's not even oil there. Like, why are we fighting in Afghanistan? This war is stupid. And then Matt Albee is in the middle, like, actually, this war isn't stupid, but also we shouldn't be racist. We should go to do the war, but not too much war. And it feels like Matt Albee probably doesn't believe that anymore. I don't think. So I to the point of what we've been talking about, like, yeah, I don't think that Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip is like a pro-Iraq war show. I think it, maybe sloppily is trying to show you, like, see, even Matt Albee was, this guy who is like anti-Bush, anti-war, anti-whatever. Even he was like, okay, let's go fight in Afghanistan in 2001 because of the climate of things at the time.
Sure, but I think also there's like, if you look at Matt Albee, I think he's the person who, when this show was made, like, I feel like of leftists, of people, maybe less leftists, let's say of people Democratic or further left,
there you go.
liberals, there were two responses by this point in time. One was, wow, we were wrong to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, but at the time we made the best decision we could. And now, with hindsight, we can be like, that was a mistake. Or there were people who were like, no, even in the moment, we were caught up and like should have known better.
Because there's some people that knew better at the time.
Sure, or there are people who listen. At the time, I was pretty young, but I was like, yeah, no, I guess we should go to war. And of course, I didn't have a lot of information. I still was wrong.
Right. And you can admit that and move on from that. And what I do think is that the show is, in 2007, showing Matt Albee as a person experiencing both a crisis of conscience and a crisis of faith, because his storyline then ties back into
he doesn't have any faith.
Well, he's starting to develop one, I think. But not only in 01 debating the war, but also like his relationship to Harriet and him realizing, hey, maybe all of this like dumb politics and moral stuff that I have held on to for so long, and maybe I'm just too old for this, and maybe like it's worth opening my mind up a little bit. I think it's a good character development for him. I think, Magellan, in your notes, you mentioned that we're going to jump around here. I'm fine with that. But like the moment where he prays at the end of this episode, or at least like speaks to God. He doesn't pray, but he speaks up. He looks up to God and says, what is he like? Show me something.
Yeah, that was the moment where
that's a good moment.
I actually teared up at the breaking point at the end of the episode here, because there's a lot. What's really fascinating overall to me about Studio 60 is that it's the show where characters are still fighting parts of the culture war that we just don't fight anymore because we've given up on it. I can't imagine knowing people in real life now who are like in a long, serious, committed relationship where one of them is a raving atheist and one of them is a raving Christian, and they always fight about it, and they're like, yeah, but we still love each other. I don't know that I certainly couldn't bear to be in a relationship like that for myself anyway. But that's Matt and Harriet, and we get this montage of them, which is kind of dorky, but I still thought it was okay, of them over the years debating about God and stuff. Very boilerplate, like atheist versus Christian talking points. But in the present day, there are two moments where Matt could be a jerk and sort of go at Harriet for doing God stuff, and he doesn't. And the first is at the beginning of the episode when he tells everybody what's going on, and then she just gets on her knees and starts praying. And you can see him in his face sort of be like, I'm not going to say anything about it because now's not the time.
Though that scene also sucks because I understand it's like, no, listen, we really need her to like drop down and out loud give the prayer, but that's not actually Christian.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing about praying in public and not trying to draw attention to yourself. Like, it's not like it's wrong to pray in public or to like lead a prayer with other people, but the way she did it, she would not actually do.
It's
that's
performative.
Like,
true.
Right,
true.
Exactly. But, that's just like, you got to illustrate something to an audience and you got to be unsubtle sometimes. It sucks, but I guess that's how it is.
It's that, or it's like that episode of Scrubs where Turk decides he's religious and he wears a gigantic cross the whole episode. Like, you have to make a choice. How do you want to be obvious about this?
Mm-hmm. And then the second moment is what you were talking about, Alan, where at the end of the episode, Matt finds Harriet praying and he says, does that ever just feel like busy work? Which is a funny line to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really hard for me to have sympathy for people who think that like sitting and praying is doing something. Like obviously the benefit of prayer is to like calm yourself and it's like meditative. And so I think in that sense, prayer has value. But if somebody is on their knees thinking that God is going to do something because they're talking to God, it's very hard for me to like take that seriously. And so I think I identified pretty strongly with Matt in that scene where he's like, what the fuck? But Harriet opens up to him. She's like, come here. Like I love you even though you're a heathen. Come here. I could teach you how to pray. And there's this little moment where he like grins and he's almost like he's going to say, yeah, okay. And then the phone rings. And I was like, oh man, you really were just about to pray just because you love her and you want to play along and understand her a little bit better. Like finally, Matt Albee. And then like you're saying, he has that moment where they're walking out, they're going to the hospital and he talks to God and he says, show me something. And I choked up and I started crying because it's like, I've been there as someone who has at one time called himself an atheist, at other times has called himself agnostic, but in like very dire moments has talked to God, whoever, whatever God is, not even necessarily believing that there's a God there, but having like when everything is as dire as it could be, being able to turn to something and say like, I can't carry this thing. I need to believe that there's someone up there watching out for me to like get through this. And even Matt Albee, who's like a big jerk.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's like, I can't carry this on my own. I need to imagine that there's a big guy in the sky for just like a couple hours, just to get through it. So I found that moving.
Or even just, I mean, like, again, I also am not a particularly religious individual. But, there's a degree to which there are times when, things are outside of your control. Things are going bad. And even if you don't believe, even if you don't think it'll work, there's a part of you that's like, but, I might as well,
just
this ticket to the lottery is free. Let's just, please?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally, that was, I found that an extremely believable moment from him.
Well, yeah, and I guess I'm the closest then here to somebody. I'm like a Christian adjacent at this point. I really am still challenging my faith all the time, but I still pray often. And I identified with Harriet a little bit doing the sort of public prayer, and I understand that in most sects of Christianity, sort of public displays of prayer are frowned upon. But that moment of does that feel productive to you or whatever? Do you feel like you're accomplishing something? I definitely think she does. And it's kind of hard to explain. When something serious happens to me, the first thing I think of doing is praying as well. It becomes a sort of reflex response when you're raised on that this is going to be my first safeguard from things getting worse. And in a situation like they're in, where everything is really, really, really scary and bad, and in a way you can't control, some people handle control by trying to assert it, and some people submit to a higher power and say, you got this, not me. And I think that's the short and long of it. But that's why I was really happy to see Matt Albee finally kind of take a slice of humble pie and be like, okay, I don't think I can do anything right now. I'm going to just let it play out. And maybe this guy can help me out. Maybe the big man can help me out. That moment of desperation, I think, for a lot of Christians is their coming to Jesus moment. That's where that term comes from. Is you went through so much trauma and so much difficulty that you were left with nothing but yourself and the Lord. And, at that point, there's nothing left to do but pray. It just makes sense there. But, yeah, I think the conversation that they have back and forth between 01 and 07, all that is pretty well shot. It's it's literally cutting back and forth in all of the different conversations. And then it ends with all the different times that they've said. And I think some of these are from the show. A lot of them are new, but some of them...
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
Me neither, which is a good touch. It just feels like these were filmed part of the show. It's this is the 100th time we've had this conversation. This is the 1,000th. And then he says, we've been having this fight in 2 different millennia now. Because they've been doing it since the 90s, and now it's the aughts, which is a cute thing. And it's just they kind of zoom out and realize, yeah, we can't... another thing I'm paraphrasing Magellan's notes, obviously, but in a long-term relationship like Matt and Harriet have, where you've kind of been on and off for so long, you start to eventually realize that you had most of your arguments. And you're I don't even remember what the result was. I don't remember what our sort of outcome was, but I'm positive we've literally said these words before. What did we do last time?
Yeah, it's this weird quirk of, I think, all long-term relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships or familial or whatever, is you sort of, I think pretty early in the process of forming that relationship, you sort of settle on what the problems are. And there are moments where those problems overtake you, and moments where you can kind of, in a detached way, be like, "Oof, boy, we fight about that all the time, don't we?" And it's yeah, we do. We also still care about that, but somehow we're able to laugh about it right now. And I just thought it was so honest, that moment when Harriet was like, when did we have that big fight again? And Matt's like, I don't remember. Well, this happened. It was around the Emmys. That's a very long-term relationship thing.
Relatable problem.
Yeah. And at a certain point, I mean, I think what they're figuring out at the end of this episode is if you want to keep being with someone, there are some things that you that might be non-negotiable, and that if they're a problem that persists, the relationship can't continue. There might be some things that change, and there are going to be some things that you're not ever going to see eye to eye on, or they're always going to cause problems. And if you want to be together, you just have to accept that. And I think that's kind of what's happening at the end of this episode. Is Harriet is well, you're a heathen, but I love you. And Matt's okay, you're going to keep praying, and I'm not going to stop you. And I love you too, so maybe I should just get over myself.
Right. Maybe now's not the time for me to think about me. I think he even... Am I right that he, in this episode or the next one, at one point considers pulling out a bottle of pills and then puts it away? I feel like that was a quick shot that I witnessed and was
that.
oh, maybe not.
Probably, but I'm not sure.
But yeah, he's turning. He has all of these like worldly things that he uses to deal with these problems, like focusing on work and like asserting his power. And I think overall, K&R as a trilogy is seeming like it's about like these successful people realizing that all the success in the world, all the power they have, can only be thrown around in so many directions before you have to let things play out a little bit. Like, and they all figure that out in different ways, because you also have, briefly to talk about Jack Rudolph, the goat himself, like he's trying to deal with the damage control of Tom, who is being put in the public eye because with his brother, him being a celebrity and with his brother being one of the 3 hostages, the media wants to focus on that entirely. They don't care about the other 2. Tom, I think, comes out very positively in this episode because he's the one who, like you said earlier, is like, do the other guys, like, why aren't they naming them? Is this protocol? Does everybody else get named and get like an escort like I am? I don't want special treatment. But Jack is like, I'm going to make the phone calls. I'm going to stop what I can. I'm going to make Tom happy. Like, he's just using his authority as a like media figure to just like change what he can as he looks at the news and watches them like falsely report on all this stuff. And it feels kind of desperate, you know? It's this like desperation of like, I need everybody to stop. Why aren't you listening to me? Why can't I just make the bad words go away from the television? Yeah, I think it's like a really successful moment of like, all this power in television just doesn't give you anything when it really matters. And then the third sort of big tentpole plot of the episode is the one that I enjoyed the most, which is the Danny and Jordan medical drama. They put a whole episode of ER into Studio 60. I cannot believe... I love this. It's so corny, y'all. Holy shit.
Is they've actually managed to make Danny and Jordan convincing.
Yes.
Yeah, they did it. Right?
They did it.
They did it.
They took a lot of work. It's like scary. There's a moment in the second episode where I was like, I feel like I'm watching People. This is like really fucking me up. Because this is also a show where they're like, we're going to hire a PMC to rescue your brother. But meanwhile, Danny is waiting in the waiting room for Jordan, and he's talking to this doctor who's incredible. I think the 2 best side characters in these episodes are this doctor and the guy who's talking to Tom.
The military guy. Come on. Oh.
Yeah, no, the military guy is hilarious.
No, he sucks. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the doctor guy, because he's the classic, like, they even quote, they're like, he's a Doogie Howser. He's 29 years old, and he's just a regular general practitioner or hospital doctor. But, you know, when they realize that Jordan has to go in for a C-section, Danny asks him, like, how long does these usually take? And he's like, I don't know, I've never done one before. And he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I mean, can't you know anything?
As soon as he picks up on the fact that Danny is, like, insulting him, he does everything he can to fuck with Danny, make him sweat, which is extremely unprofessional.
Everything he says is unprofessional. I love it, though.
Yeah, but it is entertaining. But it's the same problem I had with the military guy, who we'll talk about, where both of them, like, in real life, they would not be that rude.
Yeah, no, these are both extremely, like Aaron Sorkin guest stars. Like, the sassy expert is very much a style he loves.
Right. This guy is being like, I don't know, this is my first surgery. What do I do? Like, and Danny's just freaking out. Like, he's doing the thing that I've heard people do in real life when I used to volunteer at a hospital, which is like, can I get an older doctor, please? And he's like, no, I'm the doctor. Or the classic, I think this part's in part 2, but I'm jumping around, when the nurse is like, you don't get in without an ID badge. And he's like, can you make me one? And she's like, no, you have to request one. It's like, I just want to see my child.
Yeah.
And then finally the doctor has to be like, just don't give him one, but just let him look. It's his baby. Like, be chill for 5 minutes. Also, even the way that
So I'm sorry, Aaron. I've spent a lot of fucking time in hospitals.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get a fucking ID bracelet. It's
really...
You just walk up and say you want one, and they get your information and then print it out from a printer an inch away from their computer.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
It's not a process. It's not a problem. I understand getting into the NICU is hard, but like, let me go up to the window or whatever, like, or let me get around the hospital, see my partner, Aaron Benjamin Sorkin. You're going on trial for crimes against the medical industry. Maybe it's just because I've been watching a bunch of Scrubs lately, but like, that's a show that like actually does its medical jargon and stuff really well. But like the way the doctors even speak to Jordan, not even the 29-year-old, but like the other nurses and stuff, where they're like, "You have high blood pressure. Are you stressing about anything?" And she's like, "Well, I have a hard job and I have this boyfriend. It's complicated. I have a baby and a controversy in my life." And they're like, "All right, anyways," like it's just like whatever. So you have high blood pressure, but don't worry about it. And they do the classic like, you know, one of them like is talking to the doctor is talking to Danny about like, here's all the problems she has, and they do the stupid trope where he gives them all the medical jargon, and Danny's like, "I don't know what any of that means." Which is basically the like, "In English, please," and the guy has to be like, "Yeah, your girlfriend's not doing well."
Yeah, but this time it's a little better because he's doing it purposefully to screw with Danny.
He knows.
Am I misremembering, or is there a moment where he goes, "Yeah, me neither"? Like,
yeah,
just to be an asshole.
Yeah. I think that's true.
But it's revealed, that it's because it's pretty like dark what's actually happening. I think the baby's umbilical cord is tied around its neck, which is why it wasn't moving. And they're able to get that out, but it also means that they have to like take the baby out. They have to perform a C-section and just get the baby out before it suffocates itself. So it's like several months early, and they're worried that's going to have breathing issues. And the guy has to be like, "Asthma is the least of our issues, damn it." And I really enjoyed like the back and forth between Danny and the doctor, and like Jordan stressing out, and just everybody. Like, it's super high stress, super ridiculous high stress, but it's very believable and very much like, you know, you get plenty of like Matt and Harriet come to visit, and they like congratulate him like on being a dad and stuff, and it's like, I feel like this is all so much more realistic than Studio 60 usually is, even though the doctors are not at all. They're like in an ER episode, like I said.
I like the moment where there's this sort of fast-paced doctory stuff happening with Danny in the room, and then Danny to the doctor guy is like, "You'd make a great producer," and the guy almost in like a fuck you sort of way is like, "It's too stressful for me," and leaves the room.
Yeah, because it's right after he says like, "Okay, I'll be right back. I've got like a knife wound down the hall, and I've got 2 people having heart attacks."
Meth addicts or whatever.
Meth addicts. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which again, just so medical drop. Like you wouldn't. I don't know. I've never worked in an actual hospital myself. But
I mean, honestly, that's pretty accurate.
Because they do bunch them together and have the same doctor like do all that stuff. That part's definitely accurate.
Oh, but I mean, also like having doctors talk like that, you very much get the young doctors who want to make you laugh because they want you not to worry about what's going on. Like, honestly, I really thought this character, besides the parts where he was intentionally being like passive aggressive, really accurate.
Okay.
Right. That sort of cheesiness and the like dark humor, because like, I mean, they talk about this on Scrubs. Like, you have to have that sense of humor when you're watching people die and bleed out every single day. With your patients and with your colleagues, you have to have a little bit of like levity like that.
But I have had a doctor, when explaining my diagnosis to me, say, I've said, "I don't know what that means," and if it said, "I don't either, does it sound bad?" and then laughed. I mean, like, they do this.
Yeah,
cool,
I mean, the back and the back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doc.
Awesome.
They're humans.
However, in that case, the answer was no, it's not bad. I think if the answer was yes, it's bad, they probably would not have done it.
Probably wouldn't have taken that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen something in one of these shows where they're doing the jokes, and then he's like, "Is it bad?" And he's like, "Actually, kind of."
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to ultimately be okay, but like, you need to understand that the process is going to have her here for the whole evening.
Yeah, the episodes had me genuinely worried about the possibility that they were going to kill off Jordan, which I don't think is going to happen, but there were certainly moments where I was like, "Oh, they could do it. Jordan could be dead."
They tee it up in a really silly way that I'm like, I wonder if the show is going to really cash in all that silliness where they're like, this is in part 2, or again, still jumping. They're like, if Danny sees the child and then something happens to Jordan, then he's going to think that he has custody, and he doesn't, because he's not. He just has an engagement ring.
He's going to get attached.
Or that, not like in literally custody, but like emotional custody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's my new,
that's why when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, Jordan's going to die. But it's either that or something happens to her. I don't know.
I think I don't think it'll go bad, honestly. I mean, we're close to the end of the show. So. It's going to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
So I think
Sorkin doesn't.
Yeah.
Sorkin usually doesn't end on like a bunch of people died, but we're okay, I guess. It's like no, people tend to come out of his shows.
Yeah, it's gonna be we did the news, like that's
Right.
You're a great big man, You're a great big man, Jordan McTeer.
Danny.
So
I will
anyways,
kick your ass. I don't care how many protein bars you eat.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other the other big stuff that's happening in the 2001 plotline, before we just jump straight into part 2, is we're talking about how Matt was handling 9/11 in the writers' room, and specifically that he's trying to write. They're trying to figure out what sketches to write. Is it appropriate to do this stuff? And he's having different debates with the different writers. I thought this stuff was okay. I like it when they talk about the writers' room.
It's also interesting because we know that this is going to go bad.
Yes,
because we have established that's the reason behind the Ricky and Ron vendetta is the fact that this doesn't go great, and then they throw him under the bus.
Yes, Magellan, I know you're a big fan of the writing room stuff. How did you feel about all of this? Do we write what do we write about Al Qaeda? What do we? What's the subject that's okay to talk about? Or what standards and practices isn't going to let us write about this crap?
I enjoyed seeing a full writer's room again. I think it's good to remind us of the contrast between the show at its peak, so that when we see the room that just has Darius and Lucy and Andy in it, we're like, oh yeah, this is a skeleton crew that's writing the show now. And there are a few things that I liked and a few things that annoyed me about the whole writer's room thing. I mean, speaking of Andy, first of all, when he comes in and he's like, I have a kid, it was the sweetest thing.
It was sweet, and then they had to kind of back out of it by just saying why that scene was important. Because later Matt's like, yeah, he really took the tension out of the room. And I'm like, I know, I just watched it happen. You don't have to tell the character to show that.
Yeah, I wish.
But I did think it was really good.
At first, I thought there was going to be something in that was going to inspire their take on how to do the show, but it doesn't seem like that's what it's going to be. It seems like they're going to go for Bush when they're not supposed to, and they're going to get fired or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was sweet. I think that some of the writers' room stuff was a little wacky with the let's profile people who are Arab, and then Matt's like, there aren't any Arabs in Afghanistan. And Luke's like, well, I don't care.
So high and mighty. Especially sorry to interrupt you. No, it's the newsroom thing where it's we know how people talked back then, and now we're smarter now. And so we know that Arabs or Afghanis are not Arabs. It's I know that. You're really smart, Aaron Sorkin and company. Good job.
But it also, I think, is just another. The thing that was kind of on my mind the whole time is I was just thinking about okay, Aaron Sorkin is sort of acting as if this is completely uncharted territory. Never has a sketch show that's hugely popular had to address 9/11 before. But it's wait a minute, SNL did do that. And also chronologically, first of all, in the context of the show, SNL exists. And also chronologically, the SNL episode post 9/11 happened already by the time they're having this conversation in the Studio 60 room. And they're not addressing it at all. And the way
it's
that
meme
SNL...
of I pretend I do not see it. Whenever SNL is not convenient for them to acknowledge, it's no, that's not real.
Right. And the way that SNL handled it was Rudy Giuliani came and told Lorne Michaels it was okay to make jokes. And then they just made stupid jokes that had nothing to do with anything. Yeah. And that's what comedy writers would do in this situation. They wouldn't, even the Matt Albies of the world wouldn't be but we got to skewer someone. They would be okay, it's not the week. It's fine.
Yeah,
let's just make diaper jokes or whatever.
The umpteenth time that Luke is going fully mask off evil man, and he's no, this he says something this is not the time to be politically correct. We got to go in. Everyone wants this. This is going to make everybody happy. I love this. I love racism. Blah! And you're what? You're not a person.
Yeah.
It's very unrealistic. But yeah, I think that writers were definitely talking about this stuff and addressing it at the time.
Well, I think the Luke stuff is overwrought. And then I think the idea of, we're going to get Bush anyway is also doesn't feel truthful.
Yes.
Because I think in the wake of tragedies like this, super popular mainstream comedians aren't going to try to be controversial.
Mm-hmm. because you have their career on the line. And sometimes you do, like most empathetic humans, realize this is not the time for me to do jokes. Maybe I should just back off.
Mm-hmm.
But like one of the biggest things in comedy right now is making fun of cops, because it's an easy target that can't technically fight back. And it's like generally agreed, like, yeah, we can all make fun of cops. That's fine. Like, center, left, and leftists can all agree, like, okay, we don't.
Well, I think that's. I don't think on Twitter maybe people are doing that. I don't think that
maybe that's the bubble. Yeah,
I don't think that on SNL people would be doing that.
No, well, no, and SNL's a fucking neoliberal hellscape. Where they
that's what I'm saying is like the writers' room of an SNL-like show. What they care about at the end of the day is not like, did we do this sort of, biting. I can't even think of a super biting satirical thing, but like, did we do the Daily Show thing? I'm sure even the Daily Show post 9/11 was like a little reserved, but I'd have to watch it. I know Jon Stewart did like a speech. But their goal wouldn't be like, let's skewer people. Their goal would be like, we want people to like us, and we want people to like forget about what's wrong in their lives and just laugh. And
it's neoliberalism, baby.
It's neoliberalism. It's also just like comedians, Aaron Sorkin not fully understanding what comedians want, which is just for people to like them. It's like what so many comedians want.
I'm not trying to like make some brilliant point. I just want ratings and people to tell me I'm good.
Just laugh at my jokes, please, and like.
Please, thank you. And then meanwhile, they're trying to be funny, and Jack Rudolph is saying stuff. This is just an out of context line that I loved when he's getting mad about like Al Jazeera reporting on Tom, and he's like, "Why isn't there 24-hour CIA surveillance of every Al Jazeera employee?" And I'm like, Jack Rudolph, there is. It's fine. We don't talk about it though. Please. Please chill. Al Jazeera is such a fucked news organization. I don't even have a take other than they have to deal with a lot. And also I don't love all of their reporting, but it's neither here nor there. I just wanted to call that out. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, yeah, I think a lot of this writer's room stuff is going to pay off in part 3 when we actually see the results of the sketch happening, but we're watching the seeds be planted here. I did have a note here that I liked that guy Magellan mentioned, the guy named Denny, who was like, it's just about oil, dude, which is like the very first woke take of someone in late 2001 being like, wait, is it all about oil? Is it not about racism at all? Wait. And then they have to like go through a whole new cycle of like, no, it's actually even more complicated than that. But at least you're challenging the narrative a little bit, and I'm proud of you for that. Mm-hmm. Because I definitely think I was thinking about it like that. Like when Syriana came out, that movie, I was like, wait, is this just, and I'm even like knowing my family, I was like, oh wait, is it all about, they're just trying to get money from oil and stuff. That's all it is. But yeah, that stuff's really great. Andy Mackinac coming in and all giggly that he has a dad. I like the passing out cigars scene. Do people still do that when they like have a kid? They like give out cigars?
Sure.
I don't know anyone that's had a kid in a while.
I don't know anyone that can afford cigars.
I don't know anyone that can afford to have kids.
Damn, I was joking.
Oh, I was not. I think, is it Harriet here who says she's talking to Matt Albee and she's criticizing his sort of like fence sitting, and she says, you know what your problem is you can't make fun of George Bush. I believe that's Harriet. Mm-hmm. That's another good part where I thought the show was going to dig even deeper into like, why are you such cowards about talking about this? And then, it sounds like they're going to.
It sort of makes Harriet out to be kind of dumb in this scene in a way that I thought was strange. Maybe not, but she's like, you can't make fun of George Bush. You can't make fun of the Christians. And look, now the Christians are the good guys. And that's like, oof.
Yes.
It's a weird
version of the narrative,
line. Right? But I guess that's something that a character like Harriet might have said at the time. I don't know.
Probably. I think, yeah, that sometimes they treat Harriet as more ignorant than I perceive her as, and it's like that's really it doesn't gel with that take.
Yeah.
Other big like 2001 ass thing is them constantly talking about your brother signed up on September 12th. Things gonna be over by dinner. Like everyone keeps joking that the war is gonna be over in 5 minutes. It's gonna be over in like a month. It's gonna be over in a week. Yeah. And then they're like, the conflict could go on for several months, and they're like, wait, what? Several months? And I'm already depressed, Studio 60. You don't have to make me more sad. You did it, though. You did make me feel very bad. And then, yeah, the rest of my notes are all just like the Trask stuff is hilarious and weird. It feels like I'm in a Marvel TV show or something. They're talking about like their ex-CIA. Even Cal gets involved. And then, right when they announce that Jordan is going to have the baby, Danny Tripp decides that this is the perfect time to propose to Jordan. And she's like, she does the thing she's done before where she's like, you haven't thought about this. You're being crazy right now. You haven't even considered this, and you don't even have a ring. And he's like, yeah. He pulls out a fucking ring. She's
I like
"Wait,
that.
how
I like
long
the
have you had
attitude.
that?"
I like the attitude of this proposal. Like, well, fuck you. I do want to marry you.
Fuck you. I do want to get married is the best way to, I think, the best way to propose.
And it's kind of a cute running gag in the next, maybe later this episode, but also in the next episode where Matt is like, come on, I was writing you a whole proposal speech and you just didn't do that. You just did it off the cuff. Come on.
And he's like, well, it worked. He's like, yeah, but it could have worked better. I thought that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, now is literally not the time, guys. Please.
Yeah.
They're very fun. Did you have any other straight notes on this first one, John? I kind of want to get into the meat and potatoes of the second episode.
Yeah, I think the second episode has the rest of the stuff in it.
And you six, anything here?
I'm good.
Fabulous. Well, K&R Part 2, which we'll be moving on to discuss, also has a teleplay by Aaron Sorkin. It was directed by David Kamiades, and it aired June 14th of 2007. John, can you give me the brief plot summary of this one?
Surely can. In this episode, Tom's brother is still captive. Simon talks to the press. The lawyer talks to the ransom liaisons. Matt flashes back to 9/11 censorship. Jordan has her baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
I my first note was how weird it is that the episodes I've noticed are getting a lot shorter. Like this episode was like 37 minutes long.
Oh, really?
Which I was like, yeah.
Whoa.
Because, I mean, obviously there's like lots of commercials. No idea if they were airing more commercials or if it was like, yeah, we were just cutting production down and down and down by the end of the season or something. But I definitely noticed that because I think that's part of what works is when the episodes feel tight. You're like, oh, we're just getting right to the stuff I want.
Yeah, this definitely felt like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a TV 3-parter that needs to be 3 episodes long.
Agreed.
It always feels like you could have done that in 2.5 or 2.
And this is
if you
almost
really
a
squeezed
4-parter because they have the previous
Yeah,
episode
the previous
kind of,
one.
So it feels like maybe the reason these episodes are shorter is because they wanted to try and find a way to make this a 2-parter and they just couldn't quite pull it off.
Yeah, you can definitely argue that like this one, for example, just is getting us to what we really, really are going to want, which is going to be part 3. But I think this one is a decent second part of a 3-parter. And that's partly, like I said, because I just said part like 11 times. That's in part because it is shorter.
Mm-hmm.
I joked here that, yeah, no doctor would ever say what the doctor said about this is my first C-section, even though that's probably hilarious. You could legitimately get in trouble for saying something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Matt and Harriet are there for the baby being born. I think it is Tom who's like, my mom is taking like medicine for this, and my father's taking shots of a sedative called Johnny Walker Red. I thought it was weird that they had. Oh no, not weird. I know how this works, but like Tom was drinking they were like handing him drinks in the first part as he's stressing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like giving a person who's like experiencing PTSD or whatever or experiencing extreme trauma shouldn't be handed hard alcohol at infinitum. But I don't know. That's to help him relax ultimately. It's not like he was getting drunk and like being belligerent, but it's just like, oh, is that the best idea for you guys? I don't know. I actually don't even have a ton of notes on this one because it's most of what we talked about. I think that one of the big.
Let's talk about Tom with that guy. Because I think
let's
really
just chomp into it.
Not the best idea.
You didn't like that stuff, did you?
So Tom spends quite a lot of time hanging out with this military guy. I can't remember the rank that he says he is. Captain, with this military captain who can't tell him anything and whose job is to like keep him calm.
Unsuccessful.
But he's just like a jerk and really rude to Tom the whole time. And I just found it annoying because why it's like he's just there to be sarcastic. It was like even more annoying because in the doctor thing it's sort of fun when that guy is sarcastic to Danny because Danny was a dick to him, and so you're seeing Danny kind of pay for the fact that he was being pompous. But Tom didn't do anything. He's freaking out. His brother is being held captive. And this guy is like, "What, you want to punch me in the face? Come on." I don't care. Oh, yeah, I'm not good at this grief job. Yeah, totally. They should fire me. And it's like, what? Who are you? You're not a real person. You wouldn't be like this.
It's just, it's the like, hey, I'm here to calm you down, but I'm also really going to rib you and like kind of play with your emotions this whole time. Like, that's not. I thought that
was going to pay off in some way. Like, I've found that the best way to calm people down is to make them mad at me instead of think about what's going on or whatever. But,
well, we've still got a section left.
All right. Well, maybe in part 3 it'll be revealed that he was doing it on purpose for that reason. But I don't know.
You know, I was actually trying to look up something about the guy who plays Tom. I just found a cool piece of trivia for us. Yeah. One is the actor's name is Nate Cordry, which it turns out he is the brother of well-known comedian Rob Corddry. And you start to see the similarity as soon as I say that, if you kind of picture in your mind Rob and this guy together. So I think the Tom stuff with this military guy is very funny, but again, super unrealistic. Yes. That's my take.
Yeah,
that's the short and long of it. It's just like, yeah, like the military people, and just constantly everyone's walking in and being like, hey, can you just tell me what's going on? Like, are you okay? It's like he's playing like I don't know, like weird 5-dimensional chess with the guy. Like if I ask him the question, or like he's talking to a genie, he's like, if I ask him the question in the right way, I'll learn something. Because he's like, you can't tell me if he's okay, but do you know? Can you tell me if you know if he's okay? And he's like, no, I can't even tell you that. Stop.
Can you tell me what they might be doing in this situation if they were to be doing something?
If he was okay, would he be doing this, or that? And he's like, nah, it's not. You're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And then
blink the once if he's okay, blink twice if he's not. Well, I guess I'm not allowed to blink anymore.
Here comes the eye drops. I was kind of bummed though when Simon walks in and is like, "Can you tell me stuff?" And he's like, "No, like we're not." He makes some comment about like, you know, I'm not like you or whatever, and I'm also not from the hood. And you're like, wait, no, they put 2 black guys in the same scene. No, Aaron.
And it was good for the first moment where, accepting who Simon is as a character, which is badly written, when he comes and he's like, okay, but you can dish with me. And he's like, oh, you're right. You're not related to the situation. And you seem like kind of jerk. So totally, that clears you for classified information.
Now that you've said that, I can tell you the codes. Very goofy. Yeah, I think I want to talk about the Simon stuff last because that's what ends the episode and really threw me for a fucking loop. But it just, a lot of the stuff we talked about in the first part's actually in this one. I mean, the nurse telling Danny that he needs the ID bracelet, that's in this episode. I like to think that that's the chat substitute character who's like, no, stop it. Stop trying to be a hero weird character. Get an ID and you can go in legally. It's fine. It takes 5 minutes, sir. Because he's trying to have this cool moment where he walks in and he's like, let me just see my baby, screaming and all this stuff. I also thought it was like kind of melodramatic. And there's a lot of melodrama in this one. But Andy McEnroe being like, I've had a kid before. And like, it's actually legit sad because his wife and child died in a car accident. We already know that. Mm-hmm. But he's like, when my wife had a kid and I was all happy about it, I knew how long it took, and Jordan is taking too long. I think something's up, and the doctor's not telling you guys something. Which he tells Matt. Matt tells Danny. Danny already realizes it, and then we learn that the reason Jordan's not done yet is she's actually bleeding out of her incision wound and not stopping because she used all of her clotting factors. This is a moment where they do some medical jargon that I actually think they don't try to dumb it down. They just say it because they say that stuff, and then he's like, "What does that mean?" It means she won't stop bleeding. That's really serious. We have a hematologist in here. Everyone understands that that's serious. We don't have to get into it. I hope Jordan's okay. I really do not. I don't want this to be like Danny learning to raise a child alone. I don't think that's the plot that the show is going for. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just seems too dark, maybe?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, like we said, it's not a happy ending. It's it's an ending. It's not the worst ending, but yeah. Also, Mary Tate, like you were saying in the first half, somebody was saying in the first half.
Yes, Mary Tate. You're right. Sorry.
She makes the point to Matt of like, hey, don't make sure Danny doesn't bond with the baby, because like he has no legal rights to that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he's dating Jordan, it doesn't mean that like if Jordan dies, he gets the baby. That's not how that works.
It just feels like a parable, though, when she says that, and then we cut straight to the hospital, and he's like, the baby. Like, he goes in, and he's like, I love you, and I'll protect you with my life. And you're like, no. It's just the most, like, dramatic irony cut to Danny I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I do appreciate, I do think that's good coming from Mary Tate, because her position, she's like the super smart lawyer who likes to drop these things in just casual conversation. So it seemed pretty believable for her to be like, "Hey, let's date. By the way, don't let her."
It's getting so funny that she's like, "Yeah, so we're gonna need $10 million for the PMC. You want to go out later?" Anyway, so the PMC that's pharmacy.
When she starts talking about the medical stuff, Matt Albee sort of he remarks, because she's only been used in these episodes for exposition. And he's sort of like, oh, you know medical stuff too? It's like, yeah, here I am. I'm the character who knows things. That's my role.
Didn't she once say, I've got an IQ of like 300. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so in case you doubted it.
Yeah.
You put some respect on her damn name. I also called her Mary King earlier, which is a side character from Pride and Prejudice. That's another P&P goof on my part. I don't know. Do we want to get to the? No, there's more White House sketch stuff to talk about. Which is
the rest of the stuff in the past, we get these kind of dorky cuts where Matt's like, "Oh, come on, Andy, I didn't get dragged in. I walked in." And then later, the one actor guy whose name I don't remember is like, "Wait, Andy, forget about this post-mortem that we're having and the whole crew is here. What did Matt mean before when he said he walked into it?" And then you might as well have heard the harp music going to the flashback of like... But essentially what is we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but what's happening is they're doing a table read, and Luke is being so obnoxious and clingy with Harriet, and Matt hates it and he wants to kill them.
Stop kissing my ex-girlfriend.
And then the standards and practices person pulls Matt and Danny aside and is like, hey, this Karl Rove sketch or whatever it is, you can't do it. It's anti-American.
You don't do the Karl Rove sketch. We don't. There's no Karl Rove sketch. This one's called, let me see here, Karl Rove sketch. No, we just title them random shit. That's not what it is. I read it.
And so the episode is, making this point about, and it's going to get to this point about like, what does it mean to be brave and take a stand when it's really unpopular, but it's the right thing to do, and all that stuff, which I think is important, but also not, again, I don't think there would have been a comedian working at a show like SNL who would have chosen to do that in the context of the time. Mm-hmm. But the S&P guy basically tells them like, you got to cut this sketch, and they're obviously not going to, and they're going to air it anyway and get in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm. Big trouble.
It is kind of funny that at the end of the day, they have this whole thing that's been built up for the whole series. Like, gosh, they got fired because they took a stand and they did the brave thing. And now it's here, and I'm like, yeah, you idiots should get fired.
I often think it's true. I actually noted that the standards and practices guy was pretty good. He also looked like Joaquin Phoenix in Her. I couldn't get over it. Is that Joaquin Phoenix? In Spectrum, I believe, or that guy.
No, it looked like Joaquin Phoenix, but I don't think it was.
Okay, no, it definitely was not. But I think Danny also at one point in the present references Joey Buttafuoco, which is a pretty deep cut for people who like remember the news. Let me just remind myself really briefly. Auto body shop owner from Long Island who had this is a little dark, guys. A sexual relationship with a minor, Amy Fisher, who subsequently shot his wife, Mary Jo Buttafuoco, in the face. Tabloid news coverage labeled Fisher, quote, the Long Island Lolita. And it's like, what? He just drops that reference like it's nothing. And I'm like, when Danny reads the news. I don't even, that was in the 90s, so that must have just been a reference he had, or Aaron Sorkin realistically had in his back pocket that he was like, this'll get him. This is a good joke for me to put in my show. I mean, honestly, folks, we've talked about so many good plots in these episodes. I think it's time to talk about how this one wraps up, which is a gentleman named Russell, one of the Tom's former coworkers, is getting on the late night news to say that Tom was like completely estranged from his brother and they don't talk anymore and they hate each other and they got in a falling out. And he's like, the least you guys can do if you can't save my brother is make sure the news is accurate. Which I like that you noted here, Magellan, that like Aaron Sorkin is like seeding the ideas of the newsroom in his own mind really early. And to work on to fix that problem, Simon says that he has a contact in the press because they're keeping obviously the tabloids outside. He says he has a contact in the press who he can speak to honestly, and he asks him to meet them privately in the back of the studio, which is not extremely well thought out.
No.
And they meet in the back. And I like that. This is a little fun thing I noticed. That's the dad from Even Stevens. I've seen that guy in a lot of stuff, actually. That guy who plays the reporter. And he's like, no, he's a good guy. Like, he loves his brother. They email every day. It's very 07. And then, of course, all the other reporters are like, you're just behind the studio. You're not hiding.
Yeah, there is no world in which realistically they don't just step inside for a moment.
Like for 2 seconds and then leave. They're like, no, you have to be right here where everyone else can find you effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Simon pulls a Simon, and we don't even see all of it at first. We see him like getting ready to go off. Jeannie's like, come on, Simon, like just come inside. Like, do not talk to the press. Aaron Sorkin hates the press. Everyone hates the press in television shows. Don't do it. And then we cut to fucking Cal being like, check this out. It's on the TV. And he's talking about how like if all of them were gunned down right then and there, he would pop a bottle of champagne. So Simon threatened their news in case you thought that there wasn't going to be a part 3. Oh, he says, yeah, we got a whole new story. Like as if he's like, come back next week for this one.
Yeah, it's such a weird dud of a cliffhanger. It's like, I don't really want to see the fallout from Simon yelling at the news media.
No,
me neither.
Does that end with Simon getting fired? Like, what's the resolution of that? So to me, that was sort of a weird, like, end of part 2 moment.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like the show doesn't know it's ending soon. It's like, did you want to make a plot out of that? Because that's like, you could solve that in like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You have other things to deal with in this 3-parter. You don't need to make that. I don't know why we added that.
No, I don't know. I think they're going to. This gives me Three Kingdoms vibes, where the thing about Three Kingdoms is every single chapter ends with like, will blah blah blah, read on, and then within the first paragraph, first paragraph always immediately answers, well, no, what a stupid question.
Why would you think that?
And that gave me some Three Kingdoms vibes of like, well, okay, we're going to solve this immediately, but we felt like we needed a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Who is the Kongmin of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip?
Danny.
6. Whoa. Who's the Shwanda?
Tom.
Fuck. Okay, last one. Who's the Sima Yi?
Sima Yi is gotta be Jack.
Okay, that one I agree with. And I've never read this book before, but that feels right. I've listened to your podcast. Cool. Hopefully part 3 wraps up all of these plot threads in a nice, tight, beautiful bow.
Mm-hmm.
But I overall did enjoy these episodes, even though they were a little bit dumb. And it's Studio 60 is just that kind of show. It's a little sappy, and sometimes it's got smart things to say.
Yeah.
You're talking like we're wrapping down, but we're actually not.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Well, of course, we were introduced to a character. We've seen them before, but we finally got a name. Maybe we got it before, we just didn't call it out before. But we got invoked a chats room, chats pod, chats, a television podcast tradition.
Yeah.
What would the cast of this show order from Denny's?
Oh, fuck. Oh, this is a new segment.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably going to be the only time it occurs, because unless our answers change next week.
Right.
So I am on Denny's.com.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay, good. Wait, they go to Denny's? What happens?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. We're going to talk about the main characters of this show and look at this menu and figure out what they would order.
So where they go after Jordan gets out of the hospital? It's like, all right, let's go to Denny's.
That's how they wrap up.
I think it totally works. If you think about the position they're in, it's already like super late at night. They're going to get out of there at like 3 a.m. and they're going to be like, well, shit, what's open?
Yeah,
Denny's.
The final episode is just a single shot of their meal at Denny's, and the camera's just kind of moving around. It's like it's Reservoir Dogs, like the beginning of that. But
I was thinking more like the end, the post credit scene from the first Avengers movie, where all the just sort of sitting around quietly,
fixed camera, just kind of like nobody's talking.
I think right out the jump, Jordan McDeere orders a big fucking bowl of loaded nacho tots, and they're like, "That's for family sharing." And she's like, "No, it's not. I'm pregnant and hungry."
Anything with the word "slam" in the title?
Oh yeah.
Jordan would get something that slams.
I think she's a lumberjack slam kind of girl.
Yeah, that sounds like something.
And then like a side of pancakes.
And then Danny gets a slam burger just to kind of fit in with her.
Sure.
I imagine Harriet gets like a country fried steak from Denny's.
Sure.
Like, I'm eating healthy. It's got vegetables and stuff. Disgusting. God, the Denny's menu is it's one color. There's one color of Denny's food, and it is brown. It's beige. You're right. It's beige. Oh, signature slams. This is perfect, Magellan. So we got the hearty breakfast, the lumberjack slam, all American, the Belgian waffle slam.
My chest is clenching looking at this. I can't.
Yeah, my arteries are clogging.
You cowards!
I can't look at this right now.
I've never been able to be a late night food person just because of my life, but I could be. I could fall into it someday. I've eaten like appetizers at Applebee's before late at night. That's the closest I've had.
I feel like whatever. So everybody orders, and then at the very end, or no, they've asked. I think Simon goes first, and everyone has their order ready, and then Simon wants to build his own omelet and takes forever, and everyone gets really annoyed.
Ooh, and he's like overthinking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so everyone's just Simon, just order off the menu, and he's like, well, hang on, tell me about your onions.
Like, sir, it's 3 a.m. Please order.
I
think that Matt Albee wants to build his own Grand Slam and, like, again, over-researches it and, like, thinks really hard. He's doing what we're doing and, like, looking at the website on his phone. Although it's 07, so maybe he doesn't have a smartphone.
Derek Jeter gets a Moons Over My Hammy. It's easy. It's right there.
What is a Moons Over My Hammy?
It is a toasted sourdough sandwich with scrambled eggs, ham, and cheese. I believe it's a Swiss cheese.
Ugh. Sucks.
It's not bad.
Okay, I'll go to Denny's and try it and let you know.
I mean, like, listen, it's for Denny's. It's not bad.
Denny's.
Gosh, who's left? Well, what? Okay, I think we still have to do Jack Rudolph and Cal.
Ooh.
I think Jack Rudolph just gets a coffee.
No, I think Jack Rudolph gets a coffee and a T-bone.
Yeah, well, he orders the T-bone. He gets a coffee, and then the waiting person starts to walk away, and then he's like, he pulls him over like in a T-bone steak.
He's like
whispers it, and then like slides a 20 in her.
Yeah. He's like blue, blue rare.
Ew.
I better stick a knife into this baby, and blood better squirt all over my face.
When you bring it, pretend that it was a mistake.
And then obviously Cal gets a club sandwich because it comes with a lot of good sides, and he just wants a variety meal.
No, you're right. That's accurate.
He's like, oh, I'll get fries, I'll get bread, I'll get all sorts of stuff inside of the sandwich. It's easy. And then a tiger fucking jumps and eats his meal. I like that the identifying feature for Cal is deals with animals. He did it once. Oi.
I think we don't see what Cal's order is, but they bring him a crepe, and he's like, "That's not what I." Well, okay.
When in Rome, I guess he's in this scene. He's played by Andy Dick for some reason. It's alternate casting.
Oh yeah, they kind of have a similar vibe.
Yeah, right.
Actually, what does Andy Mackinac order?
Well, he just sits there the whole time, and they don't realize he's there until the end.
We never see what he ordered. We just see that the plate is empty.
Yeah.
You hungry? You angry, Andy? Yes. I'm going to bed.
I appreciated my sustenance.
Andy Mackinac played Ninja in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't know why, but that just feels right to me in my heart. Well, now come back next week for our next segment. Which character in which class in 14 would they all play?
Also, what would they order from Chili's?
Oh God, yeah, we just go down different menus. I'm gonna take this to the close if y'all don't mind. Magellan, can you tell us what we're watching next week on Studio 60 on the Sunset Chats, please?
Sure, we're watching the final 2 episodes of Studio 60. First, episode 21, K&R Part 3. Even more is revealed in flashback of how Matt and Danny were fired years ago. And then the final episode of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, episode 22, What Kind of Day Has It Been? In the series finale, the long night for Danny, Jordan, Tom, and Simon comes to an end. Meanwhile, Matt and Harriet create a new beginning.
They're going to have a baby?
I don't know.
That's what that smells like to me. So none of us know how this ends, right?
No, I have not seen the end. I don't know. I think we've passed the point of where I stopped when I initially watched.
If we haven't, then you watched the entire show.
You watched the show, yeah.
Correct. I didn't remember these episodes.
Okay.
And 6 is in La La Land, has never watched the show.
I mean,
before,
I've watched like 1-2 episodes here and there.
Or you've watched,
yeah,
yeah,
very far beyond what I know.
Should be very exciting then to see how this all wraps up.
Yeah.
I don't know, honestly. I think there was like a middle period where I was like, ugh, what a slog, Studio 60. But now, like, just for some timeline stuff, Magellan and I are like in the middle of our Roots podcast, and watching 2 90-minute episodes of TV really widens your attention span a lot. And so now I'm like, 35-minute episodes of like Aaron Sorkin nonsense. That's candy to me. That's 5 minutes in Allen time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll knock them out. I might watch these tomorrow just to say that I finished Studio 60.
Wow. It's bold.
Wow.
Bold if true. I think then that we should take it to the plugging zone. Gross somehow. If you, dear listener, would like to email us questions, comments, or concerns, we have an email at
chatspot@gmail.com.
Thank you. At Chatspot on Twitter if you want to get at us over there. Please rate us on your podcast platform of choice. If you'd like to support us financially, and we would really appreciate that, please consider checking out our Patreon. It is at patreon.com/Chatspot. That's CHATZPOD in all instances of Chatspot. Over on our Patreon, at just $5 a month, you get our unending gratitude and love, as well as our huge backlog of Patreon content with stuff like film commentaries, pilot chats where we watch TV show pilots, and chats nights where we hang out as friends. 6 has been on the podcast before, over there. We have a fun backlog, and I think you would like it. Personally. Speaking of personally, we do this thing where we hate social media here at Chat Salon Studios. This hasn't been so long in Chat Studios, and it's called Chatsums instead of social media plugs. And it's a segment where we just recommend you things, whether they be media, ideas, activities, whatever. And 6, I'd like you to tell me what your Chatsum is for this week.
Well, so first off, I have a little brief one. But actually, they're both pretty brief. I have been, this quarantine still ongoing. It's seeming like by the time this goes out, maybe quarantine will still be a thing, which I did not expect.
Might be.
And so quarantine has had some effects on my life, and the first of which has been an effect upon one of my favorite companies, I guess. I hate that phrase. The Coca-Cola Company has ramped down the number of flavors it is producing during quarantine because a lot of more people are buying 12 packs of soda, and so because they're drinking soda at home a lot, and so the varieties available are much reduced. And so, hey, you should have a Coca-Cola. They're good.
Dead ass?
Yeah, I like Coca-Cola.
Okay.
When we were looking at the Denny's menu, I really got hankering for Coca-Cola, and I might go out and just get one.
You're a king, Magellan. I love you so much.
I don't think I will, but now I really want a Coke.
I forever am on the other side, the Coke side of the Coke versus Pepsi divide, because I think Pepsi is good in isolation, but it does not have repeat drinkability. It
doesn't pair well.
Right, it doesn't pair well, and also if you drink 2 Pepsis back to back, you're like, ugh. And if you do that with Coke, you're also like, ugh, because it's so many calories, but you're not from a flavor perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did taste tests where in blind taste tests, if you just drink a sip, people like Pepsi more because it's sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have to drink like a whole cup or whatever, people like Coke more because it's like, I can stick around.
It's got flavor pacing.
Yeah.
I like that phrase.
My second recommendation is, so I have been known to take walks especially around lunchtime, and get lunch. And quarantine again being what it is, some of my regular places have been closed, and I'm going to recommend trying new local restaurants.
Yes.
Because they especially need your help right now with everything that's going on. And you're also probably like, sometimes when you're eating out during the normal lifetime, you're like, I just want some comfortable food. Right now, you may not realize it. You have your fill of comfortable, and you are looking for something different. So try a local restaurant you have not tried before. I tried a Mexican place that I always brushed off because they have these like generic looking posters of their food outside that look terrible. I got some El Pastor tacos. They were fantastic.
Yes. I have the pleasure of working 2 seconds from Chinatown here in Boston. And we've been like exploring every week like different Chinese restaurants because they especially need your support because a lot of them are getting shut down because of early on, at least, people being super racist and being like, I can't eat Chinese food anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, support local businesses if you can, if you have the means. Majel, what about you? What's your chat sum or chat sums for this week, sir?
Mine is a game that I was introduced to today by roommate of the pod, Charlie, and
Charlie.
It is a text adventure game called AI Dungeon. But the thing about it is that it was not written by humans. It was written by a computer who is responding in real time to the things that you command your character to do, or the things that you say, or the story things that happen. And then it just, through the magic of machine powers, it creates a story that most of the time doesn't make sense, but sometimes it does, and you're like, oh my god. Wow.
Magellan, I played AI Dungeon once, and I quit really quickly because because I don't know if it does like pre-made like intros or something, but it was doing this. Okay, because it was doing this sequence, and it kept giving me like moments to type, and I would type stuff, and then what would happen had literally nothing to do with what I typed, and so I was like, okay, why am I even here?
Yeah, you gotta, if you stick with it and really like push back, they kind of put you on rails a little bit at the beginning of some of the stories, but if you push against it, then it kind of breaks what's going on, and you're like, oh, okay. Like
I like that. I like
was
it
on
when
rails for this cyberpunk story, and then I turned into a giant crab, and it was a whole thing.
Okay. So you just need to have a little patience and let it get started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility of that, or even like the lack of flexibility, like seeing where it bends a little bit is really fascinating. That can be found, by the way, at play.aidungeon.io.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just Google AI Dungeon. I definitely want to mess with that more. It seems very interesting. I've been known to like text adventures here and there. Six, you're a notable mud fan.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mudman. I have a chat as well. It's also a website, if you allow me to describe it. So I'm not the biggest sports person in the multiverse, but I do enjoy sports here and there. And I've been hearing a lot of talk about this new, season game. I don't even know, service, whatever you want to call it. We all love baseball. And what if I told you that baseball is still happening during quarantine, and it's called Blaseball, BLASEBALL. Basically, these folks made a service. It's kind of a fictional universe of Blaseball, where it's all these different teams. Some of them are like based in cities, and some of them are, like the Boston Flowers and the New York Millennials. But then it's like, the Baltimore Crabs. Then it gets weird. It's like the Breckenridge Jazz Hands. So there's all these different, fictional teams, and they are playing micro games of baseball that are simulated on the website, blaseball.com. So you can just pick your favorite team, and you're given a bunch of coins, and you can bet on them. If people have messed with Salty Bet, which was very popular a couple years ago, it's kind of the same idea where like you're not playing anything, but you're watching things happen. It's fun. If you watch a game live, you're watching just text that's like, and all the players are named. So it's like Miguel Rodriguez scored a ball or hit a ball 0-1. And then he scored. Then he got to first base. Then the next guy got there, and you can like watch the games happen live and talk about them with people. And like I said, there's like lore on their website about the Blaseball universe. It's kind of a fun rabbit hole to fall down, honestly. But yeah, nothing but shout outs to the Boston Flowers. Six, you've messed with baseball a little bit. What's the team that you're repping?
Naturally, I'm a Los Angeles Tacos fan.
Oh, of course. I should have.
It's not an easy life, but it's easier than being a Millennials fan. I tell you what.
Fuck. Yeah.
I've heard Millennials have ruined tacos.
The taco industry may never. I actually saw an article recently from a very confused conservative writer being like, wait, so during lockdown, millennials are buying less groceries, but they're also eating out less? And it's like, yeah, dog, they don't have money.
No.
I saw that too.
Love it. But yeah, check out baseball.com. It's fun. It's idle. You don't really have to do anything with it other than like pick a team. It's kind of what you bring to it. If you're like, I love the Boston Flowers because I think that Hurley Pacheco is the coolest man alive. It's not a real man. That's an internet thing. That's an AI. But yeah, I think it's surprisingly well done for what it is and gives some sort of facsimile of like following a sport as the seasons move on, even though each season is like a week long. It's pretty interesting. That's what we got, folks. Thank you, as always, to Six from Scanline Media for joining us, friend of the podcast.
Of course.
Podcast pal.
Of course.
Thank you.
You can find me on Twitter at Sixdetmar, SIXDETTMAR, and you can find Scanline Media at scanlinemedia.com and patreon.com/scanlinemedia.
Hell yeah. Six, did my writing about Phantasy Star ever get on there?
No. Let's do that.
Okay, cool, great. I have contributed to Scanline Media before, and I will again.
There's a thing where if you like write a draft and then like message me about it at like certain hours of the day, I just forget that ever happened.
It's all good. It's all good. That's now going to be outdated, but it's totally fine. Thank you. Yeah, definitely check out Scanline Media and check out Chats as the other seasons of Chats. We love you all very much. Thank you to Magellan for being the rock to my hard place. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to this episode of Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. Let's restart the clock. Oh, Alan, Six, and Magellan. That was a fantastic episode of Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz, and I had a good time listening to it. I hope the folks at home did as well. Make sure you let us know via email, Twitter, our Patreon, Discord, what you thought. And I'm excited to hear where people think the show is going and its grand finale. Otherwise, hey, we mentioned AI Dungeon as one of Magellan's chat sums, and that turned into a Chats Nights that we recorded a little while back. So if you're a patron, that's what those are called, then you get to hear us play AI Dungeon with some fun music and editing and storytelling over on the Patreon. And we're going to try to do that one again soon, maybe on like Twitch or something, because it was a lot of fun. And speaking of Twitch, if you are following us on twitch.tv/chatspod, then you hopefully saw us streaming Star Wars Squadrons a little while back, which was a lot of fun. And I've been downloading a bunch of PC games and just thinking more and more about like what would be fun for the Twitch. Starting to think about more even like not just games and things to do with Magellan, but also like what are video games that I want to play and would like to have a chat there for. So we're thinking about broadening that stuff out. But definitely check out twitch.tv/chatspod. Give it a follow. We're trying to get more people on there, and we're having a lot of fun there. In terms of Patreon, as of this release, we do have that RoboCop commentary that was a ton of fun that we mentioned last week. And yesterday, March 20th, the evening of March 20th, you got a Chats Nights where we played some TV trivia, and you'll get to hear the winner of that decide what the next Pilot Chats is. So all that stuff is actually in the can because we're still quite ahead on Patreon stuff, but I'm really, really excited for people to not only hear that trivia game, but also the Pilot Chats episodes that it spawned. And that's what I got for our Patreon stuff right now. In the near future, if you are enjoying the Chats multiverse, you will remember that we've talked often about the Full Metal Analyst podcast hosted by friends of our show. And we've been on their show before, and if you're listening to this upon its release, then in the near future, you will hear us on Full Metal Analysts again. Michelle, Arthur, and Mike had us on, both Magellan and I, to discuss another episode of Full Metal Alchemist, which is a wonderful show. And Full Metal Analysts is a wonderful podcast that you should definitely listen to. And hey, that's what I got. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves, be safe, be well, and take care. Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season X, Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. Hi.
This is going in the post-mortem for sure.
No,
I hope so.
What a horrible part of the week that is. Everybody's sitting around the table like, okay, at 2 minutes in, Jerry fucked up, and then I fucked up, and
And then Woodrow Wilson fucked up.
Woodrow Wilson
did nothing wrong.
Oh.
Be nice to Woodrow. Ew, someone probably called him Woodrow at some point.
Called him Woody.
Ew, worse. We gotta wait. We got a whole audience. Mom, can I start? Is it okay? Okay, great. Okay, I got this. You don't have to do your part again. I'll just use your part and then I'll cut right into this.